for around 18 months during a time that God ordained. It was a time that this church needed him and a time that he needed this church. And it was a beautiful thing. Exactly who was called for that season. He brought his presence and his wisdom and his love for Christ Church and this church. And so we've got some fond memories. And so when we began planning this weekend, it seemed like a no-brainer to invite him to speak to us on this special day of celebration. So I, for one, am so excited to welcome you, Pastor Don, to bring God's word for us this morning on this special day. Come on forward. Thank you, sir.
I need to start by saying thank you. Thank you for the privilege you gave me to be your interim transitional pastor for those 18 months starting in November 2016. And I would be remiss to say that the picture I have of Rochester Covenant Church was Linda Richardson's smiley face. She was the one who created me. It was her birthday yesterday. You were a gift to me in the time of my own transition, from being a lead pastor of many big churches to be a transitional pastor. You trusted me. You loved me. We laughed together a lot. You welcomed me into your homes and lives. Thank you to Anita and Vern Williamson for giving me their house to stay in for that entire time. What a wonderful gift that was. So as I prepared for this invitation in this sermon, I discovered that I have a deep fascination with stones. I just have this kind of obsession with stones. I focus a lot of my attention on stones. I see stones almost everywhere I go. Stones have become the object of much of my photography. We, as you well know from my time here, we go to France pretty often. And in France, I begin to see ancient upright stones, sometimes 6, 8, 10 feet tall, called menhirs, that we're not quite sure what they point to. In most Romanesque churches in France, the baptistries are carved with stone, the baptismal fonts. And the exteriors are built with stone. Almost all villages have a stone protective wall around them. Old gardens have stone pathways to get through. Who cannot go to Egypt and see those magnificent stone pyramids that just take your breath away? Israel is filled with stones. It's a stony place. The stone floors of old Bethlehem made me wonder how many feet have walked in pilgrimage through these doorways, through these low archways. The graves, if you see go out in Israel, the graves, on most gravestones have stacks of stones in memory of that loved one. And the Wailing Wall. That's this magnificent stone edifice. And into the cracks are pushed prayer slips. And all of us have our own precious stones. This is my precious stone. My father's father, my grandfather, was an engineer, the Sioux Line Railroad in the upper peninsula of Michigan. When Grandma went to work for her first job, her first paycheck, she bought him this ring. And that was a gift. When Grandpa died, they gave it to me. And I can't look at the stone and think of my heritage from my grandparents. All of us probably have rings, necklaces, pendants, earrings that tell stories of people and times and places that we just cherish. We cherish those stones. Stones have been used as knives for cutting, flints for making fire, weights on scales, plumb lines for building, wheels for crushing and milling grains, vessels for holding liquid and grains, landmarks for boundaries, Stones make great bridges, walls, entrances, and coverings. So when I have the title for this sermon I sent was, "What do these stones mean?" There is no simple answer to that. What do these stones? What do these stones mean? In our text for today, from Joshua 4:6, the setting is really significant. It's a transitional time for the people of Israel. They are now leaving 40 years of wilderness wandering to cross the Jordan River to enter this long promised land of milk and honey. Moses is dead. Joshua is now the new leader for this people. In Joshua chapter 3 is this record of this dramatic crossing of the Jordan River. The priests go in first carrying the ark, and the minute their feet hit the water's pile up. How that happens, we don't know. The riverbed becomes a dry pathway. And the people pass by, the priests in the middle of the river holding the ark, as if they're going through a parade being reviewed by God as they enter this new land. And then God commanded Joshua to send 12 men back into the riverbed, near where the priests are standing, and grab 12 stones of the 12 tribes and bring them out onto dry land and make an altar. And if you keep on reading, he says, then take some dry stones, bring them to the riverbed, and make an altar that will later be covered by the waters of the Jordan. Joshua chapter 4, verses 4 through 6, verses 6 and 7. So that this may be a sign among you when your children ask in times to come, what do these stones mean to you? Then you should tell them the waters of the Jordan were cut off in front of them, in front of the ark of the covenant of the Lord. When it crossed over the Jordan, the waters of the Jordan were cut off. So these stones shall be to the Israelites a memorial forever. The word of the Lord. The changes the people of Israel were facing on either side of the Jordan were nothing short of momentous and cataclysmic. They thought they were at the end of their journey. Oh yeah, we're done. We survived 65 years. Oh, I mean 40. We're done with the journey. We can just sit back and relax now. The wilderness life of wandering and struggling is over. But now their new journey is shifting their identity, their entire identity, from nomads to farmers, from grazing to agriculture, from tents to buildings, from camps to cities, from transitory and always on the move to settled and generational. They are moving from being landless wanderers dependent on the daily gift of manna out front of their tents, and now responsible stewards of the land, growing vineyards, caring for orchards, tending livestock, sheep and cattle. They were leaving the role of freed slaves, liberated from Egypt, to that of established, powerful nation. But in the Bible, every fulfilled promise that God brought about comes with some new challenges, some new threats, new problems. God knew that. God's sovereign. God knew that Israel's one big besetting sin, and maybe ours, is a short memory. A really short memory. Israel repeatedly and regularly forgot God. In fact, in my Bible, I circled the word forget. There's a lot of forgets. The people of Israel forget God. Their momentary stresses and distractions erased her memory, like ours, and she forgot God. These stones are meant as a memory protector to keep them from forgetting where they came from. Joshua 4:24 is to remind them the hand of the Lord remains mighty. I'm worried, but God is not. Do you forget God as easily as Israel does and as I do? I can forget how God brought me miraculously to Rochester Covenant Church. What a wonderful gift that was to liberate me from where I was to now where I am. From pastoring a church like Rochester to now being a jail chaplain. I can forget so easily God's powerful hand in my life, leading and protecting and guiding me. And when I forget God, I default to my own besetting sin of entitlement. I deserve better than this. I deserve more than I have. People should treat me with more respect than they do. I resent this, that, and other things. The stones of this church, RCC, which we saw in that wonderful slide presentation, being built, are here to remind us that God has indeed been faithful for these 65 years. Through many pastors, we saw the many leaders and friends and community members. We didn't get here on our own. We are not self-made. We are brought here. These stones are meant to remind us that God is here present now, still building. He's not done. God's faithfulness is not just an anniversary occasion for nostalgic memory, but a present reality right now in 2023. These stones are not a headstone to a dead past, but a reminder of a living and vibrant presence of God at work. Now, it is amazing, as I thought about this day and this sermon, how the 65th anniversary of RCC occurs during some incredibly tumultuous and crazy times. Our culture is anything but stable. I mean, the vote yesterday, the government's staying open for another 40-some days. You sense challenges and changes in your life? Are the uncertainties ahead of you sometimes overwhelming? How am I going to get through all this? Because the land on the other side of the Jordan is uncharted. It's a little bit scary at times. And there's clearly a sea change going on in our culture and in our churches, a sea change that is almost just as momentous as for Israel. But these stones remind us God has not given up. The future ahead is brighter than the past behind. That God is actively and eagerly calling us to be His new people. The stones are a footbridge, a passageway from our past to our future, in Rochester or wherever you come from or God is leading you to. Let these stones be a witness and tell your story. Just like we heard from the children's sermon, Christian, that don't leave breadcrumbs on stones. They last. God's faithfulness. These stones are not just out there for us to see and reflect on, but there's something new, and that's why the second text I chose for today was 1 Peter 2, 4 through 5. Be living stones. The stones are an invitation for you to put yourself at God's disposal, to be built into the building He's making. God's not done here. Far from it. He has big plans for RCC and for you personally. But we need to allow Him to say, place me, Lord, where you wish. Place me where you wish, when you wish, and how you wish. RCC has a great future beyond this wonderful past, which is a wonderful past. But the future is great. The question is, how is God using you? And where is He placing you? Thanks be to God.